Hey, everybody. Welcome to Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I'm so blessed and honored to be here with my friend, Lisa Johnson, the Director of Global DEI Solutions at Cartus. Lisa, how are you doing? So good to see
How
you.
are you? I'm so glad to be here. I'm very excited about this conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And I think a lot of people are. I saw, Brenda Thoney Johnson, no relation, I think,
No
reposted.
relation, but a lot of love for her, for
A
sure.
lot of love.
A lot of admiration.
Yeah, we love BTJ out there. Get in the comments, y'all. If you're watching, hit that like button. Let's give Lisa some support. I'm so happy all of you are watching today as well. Get in the comments. I want to know your thoughts around DE&I in global mobility programs. How can we as an industry be a force for positive change and influence within our client corporations and our own companies? So I want to hear from you out there. Get in the comments. But first, Lisa, can I tell a story? Can I tell a story, Lisa? I want to tell my Lisa Johnson story. Because when I was just a whippersnapper in this business, all right, I was just a move-in sales guy. You gave me an opportunity to speak when I'm pretty sure nobody wanted to hear me. And you had this really cool client event going on a boat out in Boston Harbor, with around the ERC conference, GWS. Gosh, I don't know, probably 8 years ago or something like that. And you invited me on a panel, and I got a chance to talk. And it was one of the first times I got to be on a panel and speak. And I just wanted to say I really, really appreciate you thinking of me, seeing me, and giving me that opportunity.
Well, I remember that, and we were so excited to have like the young, cool voices that were coming up in our industry, and we still, that's still really important to me too. So glad that left an impression on you too, because it was a great experience.
Yeah, it was a wonderful event, and I appreciate you putting it together. And I've been kind of paying attention to your career lately, because a couple of years ago you took an opportunity, and I was looking at it from the outside looking in, and I was like, this is such a necessary thing that we need in our industry. And you and Cartus, and shout out, applause to you both, saw this opportunity and to create like a DE&I role here, and I want to hear about that. First, I want to say what's up to the people that are watching. Can we check in with the folks here, Lisa?
Absolutely.
All right, hit that like button. Get in the comments here. We got Adrian Grimes checking in from Glomo HQ. What's up, Adrian? Here in Richardson with us. Anthony Gonzalez.
Woo!
Let's go. Love Lisa.
That's my upward mobility buddy.
Yeah. Oh, we're gonna talk about upward mobility as well.
Yeah.
Shout out to the folks at Upward Mobility. We're gonna be having an Upward Mobility episode coming up August 7th. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that as well. Annie Ream, hey Lisa, happy to have you on the show and learn more about you. Karen Wilkes, hit that like button, y'all.
My pal, my co-pilot. I'm her co-pilot.
I love it. That's awesome. Jill checking in from Dallas. What's up? Christy Lund, Lisa rocks. Getting a lot of love out here.
So does Christy.
Max Lowe is going to be a great one. Jana Chazanowski, our DE&I beacon here. Sarah Schmidt, so excited to hear what Lisa will present. Thanks, Sarah. Jocelyn Tyner checking in. Hi, Lisa. Get in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts. But Lisa, tell me about this role. I mean, tell me about your journey. How did you even get into this position at Cartus?
Well, I think I'm the luckiest person in the industry. Let's just start with that. I've had a lot of great opportunities, and this is just one huge highlight for me from a career perspective. So, you know what? I go way back. I had an early career, 9 years with Cartus, way back at the beginning of my career, and always was looking at just what were the unique or less common situations and scenarios that employees going on international assignments had. I came in through the intercultural world, and so I really had, firsthand experiences with the first, the only, the few, way back in the late 1990s, if I'm going to date myself, and early of people who were going off to Indonesia as the first Black employee of their organization, or
Wow.
someone who was the first female going to South Korea to run a whole project, or the youngest person on a team going to lead a team in China, or the Mexican employee leaving their family for the first time, uprooting their family, missing, just being the first in their family to move into the US to work in their company's headquarters, for example. And so you're working with people who are literally, thinking about their otherness in that intercultural world. It's always front and center. And then when I moved into consulting with Cartus years ago, we started looking at the policies and the programs and objectives of companies. And there was a really big push at that time to look at closing the gender gap. And so, because that was at that time less than, I'm going to say less than 20%, but really like it was probably closer to 15% of all international assignments went to women. And we said, well, how can we change that if we recruit, retain talent? And if you work in a global company, you have to have the global experience or you don't move into the leadership pipeline. So how do we work on that? And companies that were mature in that space said, help us to break down some of these barriers. Well, the numbers are the same today. That's the heart of this story.
I'm sorry. Did you say the assignment numbers, the number of
women
assignees who are female is the same now as it was in 20,
overall.
30 years ago?
It's like less than 20 still. So some companies can say that their early career employees are equal 50-50. There are some companies that have made some progress, but overall, it's about the same. So that really kind of got me started to think about, diversity, inclusion. What are we measuring? How are we dealing with this? And over the course of years got into this. Well, of course, May of 2020 changed the world for many companies and the world with the George Floyd's murder and the responses to that around the world. It wasn't just a US centric response. It was people saying enough. Like, we need to make progress. We have urgency. We need to make change. And out of that, a lot of companies started to commit to diversity, equity, inclusion, and saying it's not just on paper, it's not just a thing. We're going to actually take action. And our industry did that. And upward mobility, you mentioned before, is one of the outcomes of that change. And Andrew Walker, who a lot of people know from EY, started a non-industry intern program and then started Upward Mobility. Well, Cartus was one of the organizations in our industry who said, look, we know that this is important. We need to focus on it differently. We can't just say that it's something that we do for compliance reasons, or we have to really we want to take the lead. We want to help move our industry forward. And the other interesting thing is you paid attention to the companies that we were working with, and while they're trying to accelerate change, you can't have a siloed global mobility function that isn't doing it too. That's such a different experience. So what does it look like in our industry? And they just started taking it seriously. And I was at a moment in my career where I said, I think I want to try something outside of mobility. I'm going to start looking at other things. I was in another position. I was like, it's time. I've done some milestones, and I want to look for my next role outside of mobility to focus on DEI, because I feel passionate about it, especially global, from a global perspective too. And I want to change. And I started looking at job offerings and started reading one job description, and it was like, just describing your intercultural background, global mobility. I was like, what is this? Who is this? And it was Cartus and the role. And I am just, that was 2 years ago, and I'm delighted to be in this position.
I want to hear more about this. I remember when that job posting came out, because it was unlike any job posting I had seen before. I had never seen a relocation management company or any supplier post for a DE&I role, and I was so interested to see how they were going to deploy this strategy. Is it going to be, obviously DE&I folks that we see most commonly are there to address DE&I issues within the company, right? To say, hey, let's have equity inside the company, right? And this seemed, and I want to hear more from you about it, but it seemed different because it seemed like it was there to also consult with the clients to make sure that DE&I was woven. These initiatives that they had internal were woven throughout their mobility policies and programs.
Exactly. So that was what was really, to me, cool. It just stood out. I was like, what, what are we talking about here? And it was, so there's two angles to the role. One is clearly that I am responsible for working with clients of ours, companies of any shape or size that care about DEI in their larger organizations. And we've actually done research over the past couple of years, and 90% of the companies that we work with say, we care about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And global mobility teams that are saying, how do we align our global mobility program with the objectives of our organization? What are the different ways that we can do that? And let's look at it and come up with steps that move us in the right direction. And it doesn't really matter if you're just getting started. We've actually mapped out, what does just getting started look like? What is making progress? And what does being an innovator in this space look like? And we have those conversations. And some companies are in all three of those categories, depending on what you're talking about. But anyway, so it was come up with a way to do this. But we had to also say, how do we take the entire organization to walk the walk and talk the talk? Because you can't just have somebody in consulting helping someone design a program, but that the Cartus isn't doing that in every aspect of what they're doing.
Right.
And, frankly, they were already doing some really, really, I think, exciting things when I got there. I did not start from scratch. 1983, we started our supplier diversity strategy at Cartus, and in our industry started measuring, helping companies to, develop a diverse supply chain. And that has only evolved. But there was a lot going on. So we said, well, how do we do what our clients are doing, which is to embed DEI in every process, policy, everything that we do. So we looked at inclusive. I'll stop.
Well, no, I have so many thoughts you're bringing up, and people are getting in the comments here as well. Get in the comments. I want to know what your thoughts are about ways that you've seen. If you're watching this right now, how have you seen DE&I woven throughout mobility programs and policies? What are some of the best practices that you've seen? Please do share, because one of the beautiful parts about the way that we do this is we can crowdsource ideas. We have people checking in here. Hosea Botley from beautiful Portugal. What's up, Hosea? I do want to double click on the supplier diversity, because I think that's super interesting as well.
Right.
Nan says, I still don't know who I am culturally. But Nan, expound on that. Tell us why. Tell us what that's about for you. And go one step further for me, Nan. Tell me what makes you feel included when you're so kind of culturally diverse and nuanced. I'm really curious. Jocelyn, we're delighted to have you. Awesome. Shout out to USI Law here as well. Jason Hall, Jay Hall checking in. The largest woman-owned business immigration firm, USI Law.
Fantastic.
Love seeing them on here. Good friends of the program. Nicole Barilli, hello from Wander. Love to see global DE&I, not enough DE&I programs. Add
That's
that
a great
global
point.
component.
We've worked a lot on that as well.
Talk about that for a second. Is there a disconnect between the U.S. global programs that are domestic and international?
All right. So I think that that's a really important, especially for global companies, it's a really important distinction to make, in that DEI and diversity in general means something different for every part of the world, right? And so there are certain elements of DEI and where it's driven from and what gets measured and where progress has been made in the U.S. that comes intrinsically out of the 1960s and laws and our history, right? And sort of whether it's rights for people with disability, protected rights within the workplace, right? All of that has driven a lot of the direction. But then when you look at a global company that is trying to roll out global culture for the organization and global components of HR around the world, you realize that DEI is is mature, more mature or less mature in different parts of the world. What people measure is very different in different parts of the world. There are parts of the world where equity isn't even a part of it, because it's just, we don't, there's not an assumption that there will be equity in certain parts of the world, right?
Well, and I got to ask you, right, is, you mentioned roll out a global culture. I mean, is the term global culture, is that a faulty premise to even think that a company can have a global culture?
Well, so like, I want to think about this from our industry's perspective, because our industry and global mobility and moving people on international assignments has always been about cultural diversity, right? I mean, actually, that's a foundation. Those are the anchors of who we are. Cross-cultural training, language training, preparing people to go on international assignments, helping them to fit in has been there long before other types of diversity in our industry, or other ways to focus on diversity, right? And so certainly there are global companies that have global culture, global values, but without a global mindset, you're bringing your own definition of it coming from your own cultural ethnocentricity, right? So what does empowerment look like in the US versus in China versus in other parts of the world? If we're holding people accountable, or what does accountability look like? What does a boss look like and a manager? What kind of feedback, what are you looking for? What is constructive feedback? That's where, like, job interviews or people's success is measured often based on the headquarters culture, whatever it is, in terms of values, as opposed to the culture of the different nuances that come and cultural elements of any local organization. So we always have that local, right? The global and local interpretations.
The global.
I could do a whole session just on this topic. It's so cool, but it is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity and inclusion, let's just keep it at that for right now, varies around the world. And if you're not confident and don't understand what it is, you're bringing your US-centric or British-centric or German-centric view of what it is, and it may not fit in other parts of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fascinating topic. What does DEI mean in Japan versus Ghana versus Saudi versus the US? I think that's a cultural study in and of itself. And
that's right. And that's important from a global mobility team. When we work with global mobility teams to develop their DEI confidence, part of it is understanding what DEI means and what is measured and what people care about in terms of making progress within the same organization in different parts of the company, in different parts of the world. So that's a big part of being a global DEI confident person and being able to be an ally to people.
It's almost like, and we have people checking in, so I want to prioritize the comments here that are coming in. But it's almost like do you have to have like different goals by region? Like, is the goalpost different by region for what success looks like?
I'm saying hi to Amy Spiker there.
Hey, Amy.
Cleveland.
Love Amy.
Yeah, right? Sure, of course. Sure. Different goals. You may have an overarching goal. So overarching goals are to create an environment of inclusion where people feel like they belong, right? Where someone, where you can, be able to bring your strengths and be recognized in the organization. Those can be overarching goals for sure. And sometimes the goals within a company are more mature than the goals within the country where someone is sitting. And that may be why they want to work for your organization, right? That they're in a global organization, that they might not have had those same opportunities in a local headquartered company, for example.
That's a good
but certainly,
point.
What do we measure? What do we celebrate? Can vary around the world, even within the same company, but you can have overarching goals that people can all buy into.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting. Jana says, so excited to hear from Lisa about this topic that is so close to my heart. Jana is our DE&I standard bearer here at Glomo. She wanted that to be part of her first job title, and she was our first employee here. We love Jana. She really leads on this across regions because she's in Brazil. And I would love for you and her to have a conversation because we want to carry this torch with you.
Me too. Can't wait to talk to you more, Jana.
Yeah, she's awesome. Farrell Elliott checking in from hot NorCal. Looking forward to this conversation. Get in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts on this stuff here. Nan saying Korean, Chinese, Swiss resident and turned American. I had my fair share of language barriers, cultural differences, business approaches, the angry Asian in the boardroom. No, that's great. Nan is intense sometimes, but we love it. That's your passion, you know. But Nan, that's great. That's a great share. I know you went to school in Switzerland. Very cool. Very good share. Farrell says maybe outside of this discussion, but being a certified woman-owned business has opened doors for me. Companies are requiring their suppliers to fill DE&I requirements to be considered. You know, I think this is excellent. You touched on supplier diversity. You've mentioned that Cartus was a leader on this back in, I think you said 80s.
1983.
What? I mean, that's 40 years ago. I know that because I was born in 82. What is the role of supplier diversity in a global mobility program?
It's huge. It's huge, especially from a relocation management company. Our supplier network is part of who we are, right? And so important. So all right. So if I'm moving, I have a company and I'm recruiting people to be in that company who are from diverse backgrounds and bringing all kinds of innovative thought and perspective into the organization. And with the, definition of family expanding within all organizations in terms of who your employees are, you want to be, if you're looking to recruit more diverse people to go into an international opportunity or a domestic opportunity, and you're going to move them, you want to make sure that when they are being moved, they leave that experience saying, I felt like I belonged. They knew I was coming and I felt like I belonged. And that has become the mainstay of how we talk about this in terms of policy. That I look at a policy and I'm not an exception, I'm an inclusion. They had something there for me. I saw myself in this program. And then when someone was moving me, that I felt like they were an ally to me, or whatever my unique needs are. We all have unique needs. We all have, different expectations. And so to make sure that the supply chain is also an ally to me and is ready to move me. So I may have an employee who has a child who is on the autism spectrum, and I want to know that the Packers are aware of that, and they maybe have some experience with that and know that they need to have a conversation with me and may want to move my child's things last, because disruption is difficult for everyone, but especially when you have a family member on the autism spectrum. Just with that example. And then you have like temporary housing, and the same way that we go in a hotel and they say, what kind of pillow do you want? Well, if you have a family member on the autism spectrum, you may want to know what different textures of sheets even, and a temporary housing that might understand that. Or you have an employee who's moving, who's in a wheelchair, and you're looking at housing, and you want your destination services provider to understand, maybe they need to live in a location that only has one bus transfer, not two, to get to the office if they have to go in the office, because it will change their whole commute and day to have to change buses twice in a wheelchair in the middle of London. So I'm an advocate for them. I understand what it is. And so your supply chain being an advocate, even your immigration team, that they are aware of and confident, and helping you to be confident around where your LGBTQ plus employees, where it's legal and safe for them to move, giving heads up when visas may not be available. It's only 34, we're going on 35 countries in the world where same-sex marriage is legal and recognized. So they need to be able to give you an assessment of the locations where you're going and say, hey, here's your green light, here's your yellow light, here's your red light of locations. We're going to be there as advocates for you to make sure you're knowledgeable about this as you move your employees, so that you don't get in a situation where you've made an offer and they're not even able to take their family there, right? So your supply chain is everything in terms of representing you as an inclusive, I belong experience for the employees. So important.
What a great answer. I have to ask because we work with a lot of diverse suppliers in this space. One of the things that Global was founded on was helping woman-owned and minority-owned service providers in the global mobility space to get their seat at the table, their fair share of the pie, and making those introductions for them. One thing I've noticed is that we tend to, when we talk about supplier diversity, we tend to conflate the different types of diversity into one bucket. So we put all of the women-owned companies with the minority business enterprises, with the SDV, OSB, service disabled, veteran-owned small businesses into one bucket and say, oh, your supply chain is 50% diverse, let's just say, right? But in reality, we mean it's 49% woman-owned, and there's no diversity beyond, gender. And how do we drill down and create a transparency of reporting that really becomes truly inclusive and equitable?
I mean, it's a great question. A lot of, there are certain countries, the US is one of them, where what gets measured and how we even talk about diversity is standardized based on history and based on government contracts, frankly, right? So, I like the term underrepresented populations, not minorities, because there's a negative bias with that word. It just represents something. And actually, it's who has, it's not always about numbers in terms of who's in the minority or majority when you're talking diversity, because people will often say, hey, HR and global mobility, there are a lot more women than men in some functions and in some spaces. And you're like, it's not necessarily just about the numbers. It's about who's in leadership positions, who's in power. That's another discussion for another day. But I do think that for sure there depending on where you sit in terms of country, there are certain recognized measurements that are standardized based on that location. Not every country has that, but there are numbers that are driven. So the U.S. certainly has that. When you're in when you're in South Africa, certainly a Black-owned business is something that's taken very seriously, right? So, and we have suppliers in India, and they'll set their own goals based on. They'll say, we want to hire people who speak it. We're all sitting in Delhi, and we want to hire people who actually speak other languages and come from. Our goal this year is hiring people who come from other regions in India who can meet more of our customers' needs. And so the office will set their own goal because they're looking to say, if our country isn't necessarily setting these goals, we want to set them based on what we are, looking to accomplish with our customers. So you can't assume, I don't know if I'm answering your question but you can't assume that there's one way to measure it. But certainly what comes up, what's salient in the U.S. Is often Black-owned and women-owned and people with disabilities, veteran-owned. U.S. is the only country in the world where veteran status is part that I'm aware of. So I would love somebody to put in there that it's not true, but that veteran status is part of diversity measurements in corporate diversity initiatives.
Yeah. Well, it's a really interesting point. Karen makes a comment here. The way talent is selected to go on an assignment may have a huge impact on who gets to progress in an organization.
Yes.
We hear about our high potential folks who get kind of selected for these rotational assignments, right? Where they get all this exposure and face times across region and across different functions of the business. So they come back, to headquarters with all this, amazing knowledge and skills and set up to be the next generation of leaders within a country. How important is it that we are equitable in our selection and inclusive in our selection process? I mean,
it's so important. It's the barrier, right, for people getting these opportunities. So some industries and some companies are really good at that early career rotational, especially international, or even domestic opportunities to have cross-functional experiences. The finance industry is really one good example of a very mature rotational program for postgraduate new hires, especially when it's emerging market leadership development. But it's rare. Like you can count those industries and those organizations. But selection is probably one that with repatriation, selection is one of the most it's kind of chronic. It's it's underdeveloped, and there isn't a lot of consistency. So back in the good old days when I was first starting, the main criteria for getting to go on an international assignment was who you know and willing to go, along with technical skills. Because it's so people will always say we just send the best. That's not true. Actually, historically, some people have used international assignments to get rid of their B and C level employees to say send them out to the middle.
Send them to the Eastern Front. You know, it's like,
and historically that was actually the case. You got these kind of, well, we got rid of that guy, but you might send it, and it's like, who do you know, and are you willing to go? But if we are trying to, we started this conversation with a number of women going on, people who are getting opportunities and equity. One of the things that we've just developed, because we recognize that there are these two barriers. One is before you go, and the other is once you arrive in a new location, that we can do better with outside of the, leading in adjacent to the mobility actual process. So selection, inclusive selection, and we've developed an inclusive selection manager workshop that is about getting.
What's that about?
So it's saying, well, how do you normally select people, whether you're hiring people or selecting them for a role? What do you already do? And then what are nuances that you can do to meet your company's goals, to make sure that you are aware of your biases, so that person doesn't look like an assignee? Maybe I know so much about them that I don't even select them. So I know someone on my team just had a baby. Well, she won't want to go. She just had a baby. Why would I even offer it to her? I can tell you so many times that someone's like, I got opted out because someone knew too much about me. Maybe someone has a kid who's in the travel team for baseball. They're like, they won't want to go. We actually just moved senior HR leader for regional HR leader for Asia to Asia, who had 2 kids on travel teams and a husband with a job, but they wanted the opportunity, and that was more important to them. They were going to figure out how to make this work despite that. But if I had just gone based on what I knew about her, I might not have offered her that opportunity.
Interesting.
The other piece of this with the selection is that there are employees who opt themselves out. So when they opt themselves out, they say, I didn't know someone like me could go on an assignment. I didn't know someone in a wheelchair could go on an assignment. I didn't know someone who looked like me could go on an assignment. So they opt themselves out. So the inclusive selection manager is not only looking at your own processes, having your biases front and center about what you think an assignee should be, but being aware of what the company's overarching goals are for their leadership, future leadership. We work with pharmaceutical companies, lots of companies that are trying to develop leaders from underrepresented geographic locations. I love that part of diversity. Underrepresented geographic locations. Let's develop the leaders from those locations. So if I know that, then I need to make sure that they're part of the candidates that are being brought to me, so that I can find talented people who are qualified to go, who are from those locations potentially, right? And then also, how do I make sure my team is raising their hands? Why aren't you raising your hand? You say to someone, well, I didn't know someone like me was qualified or was a candidate because of whatever I'm thinking about myself, right? I'm too young, I'm whatever it is. And so it's really making sure that selection managers are inclusive. And because that's one of the biggest barriers to getting people to go, is getting those offers out there.
I want to talk about this tactically speaking. We got some questions coming in here and some comments that are really, well, let's get to these comments. I always like to prioritize the folks who raise their hand here. So let's see who's raising their hand here. Leanna says, hi, Lisa. Thanks as always for your knowledge and experiences. What is a recent book or podcast that you read or listened to that you would recommend to continue to explore this topic?
Gosh, well, first of all, shout out to Leanna, because one of the most amazing people I've ever worked with, and one of the most inspirational people in our industry, and love her so much. So hello and thank you. And of course she's asking me like this question because she's a thinker and she loves podcasts and loves good books. So let me say this on podcasts. Some of the things one of the podcasts that I love most, and it's not necessarily besides Mobility Matters, which is an awesome podcast that Cartus has. And I'll tell you what, last year with Karen Wilkes, who you've seen pop up, the most downloaded podcasts tended to be the ones that we did on DEI top 10 tips for making your global mobility program, more inclusive. Those kinds of topics are you all are into this topic. So I love everyone out here and I love all my listeners for that. But a podcast that I would say that might not immediately make you think about this, but to me it really inspires is Julia Louis-Dreyfus's podcast. Now, Leanna, type it in for me, the name of it. Now I'm like spacing on it. But she wiser than us.
Okay.
She interviews people and they are only over 70. So it's like Carol Burnett. It's like, Isabella Allende. It's writers and different figures who are over 70. And what I love about it is that we know that one of the hottest topics in our industry, because we just did some workshops with our clients on this, is about your employees' aging parents and about, whether they are dependent on you. So dependent parents, which we used to only think of with Asia or with LATAM because it was a cultural thing. Now, even moving people domestically in the US, they might not live under your roof, but Ben, I know you're so close to your family, like, they might live 5 miles from you or nearby. What if you were asked to move away from parents with whom not only they care about being close to you, but you rely on them too, and they rely on you. So I love the idea that she has of what wisdom can we get from people who are of a different generation than us, because wiser than me. Thank you. Generational differences. That's the name of Julia Louis-Dreyfus's. Generational differences are so important. We're at a time where we have 5 different generations, they say, at least 4 in the workplace. So I love that, to learn about perspective of a generation that's that's older than ours, because it's actually influencing the employees that we are moving and the importance of family. So that's one. It's not an obvious one, but I do love it.
I love it though. No, I love it though, because I mean that's at the heart of all of this, is understanding other people's perspectives on things. Here's one, and what do you think about this tactic? Just a thought, maybe during the hiring process, have a questionnaire around traveling on assignments. Would that suss out the hidden desire of folks to take assignments?
Okay, so let me answer one. It's great to ask a question in your career planning, annually. Are you willing to go on an international assignment? But I will tell you, the truth is that many people in the past have ticked the box because they think that it will stunt their career if they don't say yes. But when you go to them and say, okay, we've got an opportunity for you in China tomorrow, you're like, well, I didn't mean tomorrow, and I didn't mean China. And so it's funny because historically we've actually worked with some of our clients on this strategy, because part of it is, yes, include that on your annual performance review. Have the conversation, a manager to the employees about, hey, are you ready for an assignment? But also do some things that, offer global, training for people to develop a global mindset, for example, as part of your diversity and learning and development, so that people can go in and learn about what it is to work with people from other cultures, develop their skills, so that they can actually make educated decisions. So it's kind of creating by sharing your values and supporting people and upskilling them to work on cross-functional teams, to have some, business travel, to give them opportunities, even if you don't leave your home office. It helps them make an educated decision of like, I really am ready. No, really, I'm raising my hand because I want this experience.
So you're saying that by giving them cultural exposure and training and things, that this might actually cultivate in them a desire to go on assignment more?
Sure. Because it's not, it's the unknown. Now, we have worked with one company where they've said, look, we like to give we're trying to increase women. Let's go back to that, increasing the number of women who go on international assignments. So we give short-term opportunities to our employees early in their career, before they've had a baby, before they've had children, or whatever their life is going to evolve to, get married and have a dual career, whatever it is, that, buy the dog and then it's harder to move, or the horse, whatever you have. So they get those experiences so that when they're offered, they actually already have a taste of it. Now, that's not every company, but we definitely know some companies that have used that strategy as well.
Interesting. That's really interesting to me. And that reminds me of, I remember when I, as a supplier for Cartus, we did a lot of moves, a lot of small shipment moves, and those smaller moves, a lot of times with these rotational moves with like GE, for instance. So we'd go out, we'd be, and I'd go out on these quality checks, and I'd go out there with my little clipboard and like, okay, my mover's in uniform, or, doing the packing right. And of course, you did inadvertently kind of just strike up a conversation with the transferee, and you're like, so, what makes you move? Where are you going? And, oh, well, my 9 months is up here. I'm going to the manufacturing plant out here. We're going to go make some windmills, or we're going to go do this. We're going to do that. I was like, what a fascinating career you're having. Like, and these people are in their 20s. I think we were both probably in our 20s. And thought that was really cool. It was a great strategy. Andrew's got a comment here. Andrew Walker. What's up, Andrew? Andrew says, in one company I worked for years ago, the first expat into the location would end up bringing all their pals over to work with them. It was mobility that interrupted the practice by introducing clear selection criteria. We also highlighted the need to provide developmental assignments for locals in the host country to prepare them for the roles that the assignees kept taking. Interesting.
Well, here's like, a superstar in our industry who has seen a lot of companies and really seen, different levels of maturity with companies and how to resolve some of those challenges and even be looking out for them. So Andrew's it's a great example that he is giving. And, the more you're looking for having diversity of selection. I mean, look at the best practices in recruiting. If you look let's just take the pharmaceutical companies that now care so much about innovation and diverse thinking and hiring people. It's so important. You have to be able to solve for the world's health issues. You can't just have technology and R&D that's only solving for the majority or only solving for one type of population. So they're very interested in bringing in the very best diverse perspectives and talent, right? So they make sure that there is a diverse candidate pool, and that there is somebody even in the room to make sure that they are listening for biases that might happen in the interview process, making sure that there's more than one person, diverse interviewers, not just the candidates, right? And so when you have the kind of lens on a process, then you will recognize when those barriers happen. So if I notice that everyone's bringing their buddies over to one location and they're going to have, maybe they're doing a lot of great work, maybe they're having a boondoggle, but it doesn't give diversity of the people who are coming through. And maybe they're all just working together using their normal hours, not integrating with the local community. Then that is, really important for that there to be more process in place that requires diversity of selection and having a real selection process, for sure.
Yeah, it's a good point here. Sarah says, and we got a lot of comments here. This is always such a popular topic, to your point about the Mobility Matters podcast. Let's see, Sarah saying, we are seeing many more corporations provide school placement support for kids with special needs as a way to demonstrate inclusion.
That's right.
And because it is a great way to support the transferee.
That's right. So here's something cool. We've started putting icons next to certain policy benefits that wouldn't automatically be thought of as DEI. And we've done it with sustainability as well, like a little green leaf, but a DEI symbol that makes the connection for the employees. So school support, so important. There are, and so to make that connection and say, hey, if you, this is an opportunity where if you have a child with special needs, or, this is a great support for you, or at least to educate them, the relocation consultant on that space. It's interesting because sometimes people don't always want to disclose, and they don't have to disclose anything about disabilities, non-visible disabilities, or there's very little you have to disclose to your company, right? So how do you create an environment where people are willing to share that they have a child with a special need that might need extra support when they're moving, and don't either opt themselves out because they're like, no one, they wouldn't support me. That would be an exception. They might not want to spend extra money, or I don't want to share that with them. But also so that the company is making the employee know that that's okay to have that. But definitely school selection support is a big support also for any person with a child, but also for people with special needs. Sorry,
I want to ask you, well, I mean, this topic is such a nuanced topic, right? I think somebody put in the comments when we first posted this event, they're like, this is nuanced. I'm excited to see how this gets unpacked. But I would be remiss if I didn't visit every topic these days with a question about AI and the impact of AI and the opportunity of AI to assist with DE&I initiatives.
That's right. All right. So I said, and I think when I reposted your invitation, I was like, is AI a pro or a con when it comes to DEI and mobility? And I said, yes, both. Yes.
It's
a pro and a con.
both.
Yes,
Oh, no.
It can be both. All right. So here's what we know. We know that some of the best things coming out of AI right now, especially for HR, and that really could influence us in mobility, is the ability to, one, to help us make our descriptions of jobs and descriptions of assignment posts more neutral, so that they are not, so that there is a, that function already exists, and it's being used right now for, job posts, to make sure that it isn't just looking for certain wording that might make it seem like it's only for men, or it's only for people who have a college education, or it's only for people with, certain background and experiences. And so AI can do that. AI can remove gender specific or biased terms from job descriptions, for example, or from policy. Like I just actually spent this morning looking at someone's policy and using that and doing this sort of DEI audit and lens of a pretty mature company that is very progressive when it comes to DEI, and found a few places in that old policy that still say, him, her, but not there, or just to say there includes him, her, their, everybody, like their partner support. It doesn't really matter if it's he, her, it's neutral.
Sure.
So looking for those things, AI can do that. The con, just to not go into a whole, we could spend all day on this, and it's, but the cons is that just like the unconscious bias that we bring, assuming that only certain people who look like this or are this age or from this country could be on international assignments, that whoever's putting in the data, the technology that's entering the data, it's garbage in, garbage out. It's also bias in, bias out. So if the information that's going into AI that's feeding it has its own biases, and it's not diverse input, then what comes out is going to just hold on to those biases, right? So it will, we have to be very, very careful that we are hiring diverse people to work in AI, to be the people who are feeding in the data and the information, and that the sources are diverse, so that the information that comes out is also diverse. And right now, that's definitely a watch out for AI, that there are biases. We can take that back. I just want to give you one really quick example that I think of, which is Kodak, the film processing. It has nothing to do with AI, except that it has everything to do with AI, because it's a great example of this. So Kodak historically had a set of guidelines when they would send out the chemicals to process film around the world. They would send it to Vietnam, they would send it to India, they would send it everywhere in the world. But the people who wrote those guidelines were writing it for light skin toned figures, people that would be out. So all of the instructions would give a beautiful finish on a photo. And you get to Vietnam, and they're like, why does everyone look so dark? Or they're not in focus. And it took years for them to recognize that they needed to adjust the chemicals, the guidelines to make sure that different diverse people showed up in film better. And it's just an example of how if the only people working on something have one way to look at what it's supposed to look like, but they're sending those instructions out. The AI has the same. I'm sorry, I hope that wasn't a rabbit hole and that there's a lot.
No, it's fine. I love the stories. I think specifics are needed. I think sometimes what we do is we gloss over some of these things and we use general terms, but I think these stories illustrate the point exceptionally well. I mean, we hear the same thing about facial recognition technology today, right? If it's developed by a certain type of person, it's not going to serve everyone, right? And so I think it's important to have a lot of different hands on these things to make sure that we're all looking through.
So there's upsides, and I think we're still in the evolution, right? So I think that's we're going to watch this space. The Dove AI commercial.
Yeah, Leanna's bringing up the Dove AI commercial really hits the point home that important that not building AI hits this home. That important that not building AI biases. Invisible Women is also a great book about data biases.
Great.
Super interesting.
Great. Thank you for sharing that.
Benjamin Bader had him on the show recently. Very good points and a big challenge. Interesting if you think about Google Gemini and how their well-meant approach to diversity totally backfired. Oh, super interesting. Benjamin, can you put a link in the comments? Yeah, link it. That's the other thing I love about this. Everybody now brings their diverse perspectives in.
I love it. I knew this hour was going to go by too fast. We needed a double barrel hour.
Well, this is, I think, the beauty of our show's structure. Like, people are like, why is it an hour? That's so long. I'm like, I know. But the second half, we get comfortable. We get the juices flowing. And now everybody's like starts popcorning ideas. And then because of the comments, everybody can chime in with their 2 cents. And now because we can link, it's on the internet. So now, boom, they're putting links into things. So, I mean, get involved, y'all. Put your voice in here. Yeah, dude, you have a second, man. We got 9 more minutes, Ben. Take your time, buddy.
Yeah.
This is really fantastic, but I want to also have some fun, Lisa.
Okay, me too.
Can we have some fun? All right.
Okay.
Not that this hasn't been fun.
I was going to say, like, this is the funnest day of my life. It's so fun. I love talking about this.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. But we like to play games. I make everybody wait for the cherry on top. Okay. We did our homework. We got smarter. We learned about the relo. Okay.
That's right.
Now we're going to have a little fun. All right, y'all.
Okay.
Here comes the payoff. Okay. We're going to do a little overrated, underrated game. Okay. You ready, Lisa?
Okay.
The game is overrated, underrated. Okay. This is not a equitable game. I'm going to warn you now. Okay. It's not an equitable game at all. Okay. I'm the decider. Okay. All right. So this game, do you know the rules of this game, Lisa?
No.
There's 2 rules. I'm going to provide you a topic and you're going to tell me if it's underrated or overrated. Okay. Very simple. There's 2 options. Okay.
All right.
Second is I'm going to tell you if you're right or wrong. Okay.
All right, those are my house, my game, my house, my rules.
Exactly. Hey, I grew up my whole life. Okay, my mom said under my roof, it's my rules, and I'm like, oh, okay, fine. Here we go. All right, the first topic is ice cream with cookie flavors, cookies and cream per se, Oreo.
Totally overrated. It bugs the crap out of me, actually. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. It bugs me a lot.
We're good.
Okay. Like, oh my God, have I offended people?
The censors, no.
It bothers me. It bothers my Chilean husband. Chileans are crazy about ice cream. But anyway, I do not like ice cream with cookie flavors at all. And they're everywhere.
Get in the comments right now, everybody. Okay. I want to know what you think about this. She's the whole, 52 minutes of super equitable, inclusive conversation. And all of a sudden it just goes to heck in a handbasket when we start talking ice cream. Okay. Get in the comments. I want to know, is Lisa onto something, or is she off her rocker? What do we think about this? Lisa, what is the worst example of an ice cream with a cookie flavor?
Oh, okay. I'll have to rate it. I can think of the best example, but the worst example, just the ubiquitous Oreo. I like something fresh, ice cream I was a kid. I spent my summers in Mississippi, and you got to, if it was your birthday and mine is a summer birthday, we got to pick our flavors, and it was something like fresh peaches, fresh strawberries, or even just like peppermint candy with a fudge sauce on top. Like, it's not like it has to be something super healthy or something, but I just think the cookie, unless you're in Chinatown in New York City and you get the Chinese almond cookie flavor, I'm not into the cookie thing.
Okay, so we have an exception. We have the Chinese almond cookie flavor.
Well, it's an inclusion. It's an inclusion, not an exception.
Yeah, RMCs don't like exceptions, right? It's an inclusion. This is great. We've got agree. We got one agree. Ice cream with cookie flavor is overrated. Andrew's on the fence here. Cookies and cream is good. Cookie dough, gross. You know, it's like I grew up my whole life to tell you don't eat the cookie dough, don't eat the raw dough. You get salmonella, etc. And now you're making an ice cream with this stuff and proliferating it through the youths. I like chocolate chip ice cream, but not cookie dough ice cream. That's another vote against. Oh, and then Christy's calling you out. So I'm shocked at this cookie dough slander. All right. You know what? I will say, you know, gosh, you know, you're only allowed 2 answers, overrated or underrated. I think it's properly rated. I don't have a beef. I got a lot of problems with a lot of things.
Yeah.
I don't have a beef with this. Okay. I mean, cookie dough, is it odd? Yes. Is it ice cream? Yes. There's very few ice creams I don't like. You know what my beef is with the ice creams? I don't care for a lot of the concept of fruit ice creams. I don't care for a lot of that.
Okay.
But you know, just me. All right, we got more stuff coming in here. We got another one though. You know what? You like ice cream? Let's stay on ice cream. Ice cream, vanilla ice cream with fresh fruit on top. Overrated or underrated?
It's totally underrated. It's so good. First of all, vanilla ice cream, I know it's, you know, a lot of people criticize me for liking vanilla ice cream, but it's a palette. It's your canvas to then put anything else on, and a fresh fruit, like cut up peaches. We did that this weekend. We were out by the beach and cut up peaches, or I mean, you could just put anything on it and it'll taste so, even whatever you have with fresh fruit on top. It could be a banana, whatever. It's so good. Vanilla is just your palette to then explore with other flavors. I think it's underrated.
Get in the comments. What is the best fruit to put on top of ice cream? Put it in the comments. Lisa, what's the best fruit to put on top of ice cream?
Well, I've been talking peaches, and I do have an affinity for peaches, Georgia peaches in the summer, or I think I'm going to stick with stone fruit. Can I just do a genre of fruit?
Stone fruit? No, you can't. No, it has to be one. We're not putting plums on ice cream, Lisa. What are you?
Well, if you mix it with a little bit of like brandy, like plums, anything with brandy actually tastes really good.
Hold on, watch out. This just got PG.
It just went up to, yeah.
Let's see here.
13.
Ken is saying, what is this? We got people chiming in. See, you talk about DEI, you get a little bit of engagement. You talk about ice cream, it goes nuts. Kenna Boyd says ice cream, fresh raspberries, and balsamic glaze. Right. Is Kenna crazy or is she on to something?
She's on to something. It can be like, for me, it's Amaro, but that's because I did this. My husband had to give a talk in Bologna, Italy, it was the most spectacular thing I've ever, you know, lived through, being in Bologna, Italy. You can't believe, besides Bologna, what's there. All kinds of things. But they would put Amaro, which is like a bitter, you know, it's kind of like in the
Campari,
it's not balsamic glaze, but it's just something you didn't. It's like a really nice liqueur that, you know, it's kind of it has like a bitter but a sweet, and it's a great on any vanilla ice cream. I'm with it.
Well, you know, it's a really good example. It's a really good example about how contrast and diversity makes diversity of flavors makes a better dessert. You know, because Amaro's kind of got this bitterness to it. The outrage continues over the cookie dough slander. That's fine. Get over it. Jocelyn says strawberries. Strawberries is a good choice.
Yes.
Andrew's still sticking with the cookies. He won't be denied. We got another balsamic. Is this glaze, right? This isn't just the vinegar. We got to use glaze. Teresa saying peaches. Got a peach vote here.
What a good summertime conversation, I think.
Uh-huh. People are asking, and I'll ask you, Lisa, does apple pie count as fruit?
A fruit filled. You can put apple pie on top. Oh, you mean like as an ice cream?
Yeah, they're saying there's apple pie. I mean, if I'm putting fruit on top of my, does apple pie
Well,
count?
a la mode, usually you put the ice cream on top of your apple pie, but I would take a piece of apple pie with ice cream underneath it.
Yeah, at that point, it's just semantics, right? Teresa saying soak those peaches and berries in white port.
Oh, Teresa, I'm liking it.
Nice. We're putting links in here. Not Campari, Ben. You're Adrian's band, more of an herbal liqueur. Amaro and Campari, they're not similar?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm saying it adamantly, but
I don't know if we know that. Do we know that? Campari versus Amaro. I think it's similar.
Maybe because
it is a staple Amaro in many drinks.
Okay.
Campari. Get out of here, Adrian. You're banned. Adrian's banned.
I might have been banned too.
This is great. All right. You know what? I like it. You're right. That is a great topping. All right. You know what? You're 1 for 1 here. Okay. You're 1 for 1. Let's keep it going here. Next one up, Adrian, you're unbanned for this one. Truffle oil.
I gotta say it's overrated. It's overrated. It just it can go too far. It can just people go too far with it. It becomes the only flavor. I like a tiny bit of it goes too far.
So do you discriminate between white truffle and black truffle oil, or do you hate all truffle oil?
The oil is not my favorite. Like a shaved little bit of truffle, and some people like piles of it. I just think it I like it. I appreciate it. I have sophisticated tastes if I need to, but the oil, like people put it on popcorn, they put it on everything, and it becomes like the only thing you taste. That for me is a little frustrating.
I think the real beef
probably not no one wants to invite me to dinner. I'm a great dinner guest. Invite me and I won't complain in your house. I'll try everything.
She's gonna crap on your truffle oil and your cookie ice cream.
Andrew Walker, I will eat your cookies and cream ice cream with truffle oil on it.
Oh, this is great. Adrian saying truffle oil is so overrated. We've had this conversation before.
Adrian.
I think the real beef here with truffle oil is not the taste, but it's the smell. If you're sitting down for dinner and you're like one of those like wood-fired pizza places and you're having a nice conversation and then a waiter walks by you and smells like body odor or feet and you're like, whoa. And then you realize they're just carrying a truffle oil pizza.
Yeah.
That I think is the real tragedy.
Yeah.
I like umami bombs. I like things that just give a ton of flavor to stuff. I like little hacks like balsamic glaze.
Right.
Therefore, I like truffle. I don't say put it on everything. It ain't Freaks Red Hot.
No, just overrated that it has to be on everything. That's my thing. Popcorn. I like my yummy popcorn.
Yeah, popcorn is good. Yeah, I think truffle oil and pop. Even then, though, I'll take truffle oil over that movie theater butter.
Well, that's true. You're making me. Although, well, all right, we won't. I have a little. I like as much. I can go Frito and I can go truffle oil. I like a little everything in between. I'm an equal opportunity.
Okay. Let's go here. Let's go to pimento cheese. How about that one? Pimento cheese, underrated or overrated?
It's underrated. I love it. I love pimento cheese. So I'm a Southern girl.
That's the Southern girl.
I know that everyone, it's like, I lived in Spain a long time. I love making paella, but everyone has their own recipe. Pimento cheese as well. And it's one of those things where I like it simple. When I would arrive to visit my grandfather in the summers, the first thing he would do is insist that I make him some pimento cheese. And so I learned to make it at a very young age, and I really love it. And it has a little bit of bite. It has a lot of black pepper. It doesn't have anything really too many frilly extras, but I really do love pimento cheese on a saltine cracker, on about anything, but saltine cracker. No truffle oil. What kind of cheese goes into pimento cheese? Cheddar. And I do a mixture of really sharp and medium sharp. So, but and you have to grate it yourself. If you buy the already grated, it's kind of like it's too dry.
No, but they put like a drying agent.
I guess this is as exciting as inclusive mobility.
Oh yeah. Well, you're putting the sharp cheddar with the medium sharp cheddar.
right? Like, and it all comes together.
I mean,
It's diversity of cheese, but
Yeah.
one, main theme of cheese. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, your picks are incredibly diverse and inclusive, with the exception of cookies. I mean, other than
Exactly.
cookies being a persecuted class here, everything else is very pro inclusion here. I love a good pimento cheese. I remember as a kid, I would sneak into the fridge, and scoop me a little bit of that stuff when nobody was watching. I think it's phenomenal. I think it is just a very underrated, kind of slept on Southern tradition. It goes
Southern
on every
American.
sandwich.
It's
Yeah.
very American. I think people who are listening in, your listeners from outside of the U.S. may not know what pimento cheese is, but it is delicious. And if I
You
ever
gotta send me your recipe, Lisa.
okay.
Okay. All right. The next one here. This one's gonna be divisive. Kale.
I'm sorry, I think it's overrated. I know Leanna's going to be on there like, what?
What?
It is. It just became too. It's kind of like the truffle oil. Like anytime something just becomes like on every single menu, it pushes me away a little bit. Like what? So it isn't. And I also had a bad experience with kale once. Kale and gin tonics in the same meal for a lot of both. It wasn't a good thing. So that's probably part of it. But I do think it suddenly appeared. I live in Brooklyn, New York. It suddenly was on. You could, you just couldn't order any meal without kale. So it became my like, hey, let's give other things a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. I like kale. I like kale chips, and I do think it stands up well in some salads if it's like shredded and there's like it's like a very like a wet salad or a lot of dressing or something like that. Kale will stand up well without wilting. But listen, honestly, if I never ate kale again for the rest of my life, I'd be okay. So I'm with you. Overrated Brooklyn. Get over the kale. All right, we got a bonus one. We got a bonus overrated, underrated. This is for the big comeback here. Tomato sandwich.
All right. We're in full summer, so I've been on peaches and I've been on tomato, and pimento cheese and things that I love. I love nothing more than going up to my green market on Saturday mornings, buying a single beautiful, perfect tomato, and coming home and just putting it on a piece of actually soft bread and some mayonnaise. And it could be homemade mayonnaise if we're sophisticated, and we could be just Hellman's mayonnaise or whatever you like. And some black pepper, some salt, and I just think it's the most magical thing you can eat, but only when they're in season.
Yes, there's so many bad tomatoes out there, but man, I will stand on this too, because it's the segment of the show where we can just get wild and crazy. The only good thing to come out of New Jersey is the tomatoes. Okay, I said it. Okay,
people I know who are on this call who are pretty good.
They'll agree. If they're from New Jersey, they'll agree with me. Okay.
For so many things in there, you don't think about it with agriculture, but New Jersey has incredible, cows, yogurt, all kinds of, agrarian state. But we only think of Elizabeth, New Jersey, and the industrial, the old Newark.
Oh, I got no problem with Elizabeth's. I just have an issue with my stepfather's from New Jersey. I feel like I can say that. I was raised by a guy from New Jersey.
I can't believe I'm sitting here defending New Jersey, but you have to.
Exactly. You're on my side. You know it. And you know that tomato that you're eating in Brooklyn, New York came from New Jersey.
Maybe
I'm right.
Hopefully it's
look, Andrew Walker shouting out Brick City. Don't knock dirty Jersey, man. Dirty Jersey. Yeah. Oh, love you, Andrew. All right, fine. If Andrew, are you from New Jersey originally? You're too nice to be from New Jersey. We'll see. This has been a lot of fun, Lisa. You know what? I'm not keeping score. It's not about that today. Okay. You win. Great, overrated, underrated. I've loved this conversation. We went a little long. I apologize, but thank you everybody who hung in there, everybody who got in the conversation. Hit that like button. Show Lisa some love. Lisa, do you want to maybe just leave us with the final thought, something to think about?
All right. So here's the deal, because to me, I think the best thing about inclusive mobility, I'm going to take us right back to inclusive mobility, is that it is not just something off to the side. It's not just something you do for compliance. It's not just something you do for doing the right thing. It actually is a business strategy for every company that in terms of innovation, in terms of other ways of thinking, in terms of making the world right. And if you think about sustainability, DEI is about, I didn't know you were going to ask me this question, but DEI is about sustainability. It's sustainability of talent. It's sustainability of your leadership, of your pipeline. I just want people, no matter where you are, don't be intimidated by it, but it just has to become embedded in everything that you're doing. So don't think of it as off to the side and check the box. And I can't wait to just keep talking about this. So this was great. Thank you so much for having me, Ben and Adam and your team, your amazing team. And I hope I get invited back sometime, because this is constantly changing and we're making a lot of progress. So let's just keep the conversation going.
Let's keep the conversation going. Tune in on August 7th. We're having Upward Mobility, the friends, the folks behind that on the show. Shout out to Andrew Walker. Lisa Johnson, thank you for being here. Shout out to Brenda Thoney Johnson, always making stuff happen as well. Shout out to our super producer, Adam. It's been a lot of fun. Everybody who got in the comments, I love y'all. Thank you. We do it for you. We wouldn't have a show without you. Thanks for being here. I will catch y'all next week. Thanks, Lisa.